Okay, this is going to be covering Lab 3, which is the integumentary system, and it's just one page in your notebook. Let me grab a pencil so that here it is. Okay, so we're looking at a model of the skin, which you see there in your book, and this area here represents what the top layer of the skin, the epidermis of the skin in your scalp. But you see here, this represents what it's like on the sole of your foot, because it's a lot thicker than, because there's so much abrasion that happens there from the constant walking and rubbing, that we're going to need extra layers as opposed to what you have in your scalp. Now, this top layer here is the epidermis, and that is all of this. That purple wiggly line is the bottom. And then in between that and the yellow that you see down here, that's the dermis layer of the skin. And then below that, where you see all the yellow with the adipose tissue in it, that's the hypodermis, or the subcutaneous layer of the skin. Now, looking at the epidermis, everything here, we start out with the stratum corneum, which is the top region, and that's the flesh color there, and you see how much thicker it is on the bottom of your foot. And then below that, the next region, this little wider area that you see, that is the stratum lucidum. Now, you don't see that over here in areas where you don't have thick skin, like on your scalp. But then there's, up underneath that is the stratum granulosum, and the cells are getting real flat there, and they're coated in keratin. And then below that is the stratum spinosum, where the process begins of making the keratin that coats the cells. And then the very bottom layer, the squiggly line that goes up and down and wiggles around, that's the stratum basal layer. So the epidermis, which is the top layer of the skin, has 5 regions. The stratum basal is at the bottom. Then you have the stratum spinosum, which is right above that. It's several layers thick. And then you have the stratum granulosum, which is several layers thick, where they become flat and more squamous shaped because they've been pushed up from where they're getting nourishment down here in the dermis and oxygen, and so they're starting to die. And if you have thick skin, you're going to have the stratum lucidum, which is just a couple of layers thick. And then the stratum corneum is on the top. And you see how many different layers you have of the stratum corneum where you have thick skin, where you don't have as many, where you have the rest of your skin on your body. Now, here you see these little structures all throughout, right up under the stratum corneum of the epidermis. Those are your tactile corpuscles. They detect light touch. And you notice they're very close on the skin with the epidermis because they're going to detect the light touch. Now, this represents an eccrine sweat gland, which is an exocrine gland that will secrete sweat through the sweat duct to the pore that's on the surface. You have lamellated corpuscles down here, deeper in the hypodermis or the subcutaneous layer, and that is where you detect a deeper pressure or vibration. The dermal papilla, you see these little nipple-like things where we pulled off the epidermis, and the dermal papilla, that's what the top of the dermis looks like, and that's why you have the indentions in the stratum basal. Those are dermal papilla. And then sebaceous glands, these are the glands that are associated with a hair follicle. that will secrete their product, the sebum or oil, up to the surface of the skin. And you see that's why your hair gets oily and your skin is oily. The hair bulb, that is down here at the bottom of the hair follicle. The erector pili muscle is here, and that is smooth muscle. It's associated with the hair follicle, and it's involuntary, and you can see why when it contracts your hair will stand on end. Then you have the hair follicle down here near the hair bulb, and you see it's got nourishment coming from hair papillae here that provide it with nourishment. So your hair's alive and growing down here, and as it gets pushed up, it gets too far from this nutrition and oxygen source, and so it dies. And so by the time it becomes up here as a hair shaft, it's dead. And that's why it doesn't hurt to get a haircut.